Okay, so I read this thing today about a girl who was talking about her experiences sort of in the street, meeting guys, and the cat calls and stuff. And I mean, we've all been there. Right? We've all been there. And but she was talking about some of the more aggressive, just crazy things that happen to you in the street as a female. And that was a big thing towards the end of 2014. This whole call towards stopping street harassment, right? And uh, but it's one of those areas that's really hard to uh, pinpoint, like, because for one woman, a whistle isn't a big deal, or a good morning, or you look nice today, or isn't a big deal. But for another woman, it's an invasion of privacy, and I understand both sides of the equation, and I think it's to each his own. I think no matter who you are in public, to err on the side of courteousness and self-respect, and respecting another person's space at all times. And I think, like, as a woman, I don't really have a problem with people, guys being like hi, but again, it's all in how it's done, right? It's all in sort of recognizing that the person you're speaking to is a person, right? And that she doesn't really owe you, well, quite frankly, she doesn't owe you anything, but she certainly doesn't owe you, like, her phone number, or like or to reciprocate your interest or anything, right? I think she's just a person, and she's a person who's going about her business, who isn't forcing you to say anything to her. She's just somebody moving through space. Right? That's all she's doing, and by virtue of her moving through space, use it, and it's perfectly fine to be like, oh, she's attractive. I want to go see her. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, it's all in how you do things, right? And yeah, and I don't know why it has to become uh, sort of contentious with some people, well, either guys or girls. Some girls are very, like, you could be perfectly well intentioned and pleasant and lovely, and some girls are going to be like, I want to fight you. Right? So even you can't, everybody's different, right? So that's something to keep in mind too as a guy, if you're thinking about approaching a lady, right? Not everybody's looking forward to being approached, and the guy who approached her before you did might have been a real ass. So you just be aware of the fact that these are people. This woman is a person. She doesn't owe you she doesn't even owe you appreciation, to be quite frank, right? She doesn't, because she comes at this encounter with her own experiences and her own sort of ex- uh, expectations of being left alone, right? Like, of not being accosted in the street, at the very least. In sort of this context of being a person who takes up space, and being a person who believes in women taking up space, and that reading that article made me think of this conversation I had with a friend of mine when we were much, much younger. And we must have been like 12 or 13 at this time, and we were talking about our experiences with like, people that we know. And I believe the way that it came about was we were watching a talk show, but nevertheless, we were talking about men and being assaulted, and experiences in these sorts of things, um, and I think in the show the woman was talking about how her relationship with food had to do with being having been assaulted, sexually assaulted. And so my friend and I were talking about these experiences that we'd had, and and in my experience, these things are quite prevalent. And in the female experience is you've had situations where, whether it's a stranger or a friend of the family or even a member of your family, who have violated your trust or violated your body, or just fully assaulted you. And I've had friends who've been through all manner, myself included, through all manner of of situations. So, and you know, and like I say, by this point I was about 13 when we were having this conversation. So these are experiences that happen when you're very young and continue, you know. So it's not anomalous or strange or anything. It's just sort of part of the reality that women experience. And then this question about weight and food and how that plays into it was interesting to me because it made sense to me. Like not because I wasn't having food issues. I don't tend to think I have food issues. Not to say that I'm not self conscious, but I don't think that that's how my self consciousness manifests itself. But it's something I understood, and it's something that made so much sense. This woman who was talking about how she eats. I mean, I'm sure she eats for the comfort of the food as well, but also because this layer of you know protection that it gives you as a woman, and it made me think about being out in the street. When you go out in the street, and how you are constantly sort of negotiating your feminine, call it, I mean, you know, when I was thinking about it, I sort of I think about the presence of a woman's body in space as being something that really is sort of demonstrative of her. We think of it as sexuality, but I don't think it's sexual. I don't think it's a question of being sexual. It's not a sexual thing, but it's this. There's something about the feminine form that is very, yes, attractive, but not attractive in the sexual sense. Attractive in the her power manifestation has to do with being able to attract things. I think it's the power of creation, right? Is to attract things. So that is something that a woman does by virtue of simply being. And then when you're in public spaces, your ability to just be this thing becomes controversial because we've yet to sort of figure out how to reconcile feminine power with public spaces. This is though feminine power has no place in public. And this is something that I think when it comes to the catcalling, that's really what we're talking about. That's what we're debating. Is can feminine power sort of exist in space and be safe and be acceptable and be, you know, not something that you have to cover up or hide from or, you know, shrink, you know, and we do a lot of that. And I don't mean that it's just men who are to blame. Like in terms of putting the onus. I mean, women put the onus on women as well, right? We all do this. We all say to women, to each other, you know, and I don't think it's as blatant as, well, what did you do? Even though that happens too, but it's certainly, you can see it with women and how women in public spaces as well. Like it's not just how men react to women, but it's how women react to women. It's how women react to each other, and we haven't figured out how to live with feminine power without feeling threatened by it, which is kind of sad. It's kind of sad, and I think it's part of why women aren't more physical, you know, and that is, it's something that drives me crazy. But I mean, if you are a physical woman, I think that you're automatically sort of a renegade. You're automatically sort of weird. And what do you mean you know how to throw? What do you mean you know how to run? What do you mean you know how to dance? Right? There must be something wrong with you, right? But you're just physical, like, and you're comfortable being physical, and you're comfortable with being physical in space. I think no matter who you are, no matter where you are, I think you're always conscious of it. Even if you're somebody who's comfortable being physical, you're very conscious of being in space because you're taught to be. You're taught that your physicality, your being in public spaces, there's something to be wary of. There's something to be careful about. And that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But for good reason, we are, as women, concerned about it because our safety is an issue. And I don't think men really believe that. And I think, you know, guys are like, oh, especially because most guys are really just great guys. They're really just, oh, I think she's cute. And they, you know, so they don't realize how Or like they don't realize how crazy it gets. Like it doesn't get crazy all the time, and mostly it's perfectly pleasant and charming, and it's, you know, but every once in a while it's crazy. Like it's crazy. Like you know, and as a woman you develop defenses, right? Whether that's screw face in the middle of the street, like you look unapproachable, because it's a defense mechanism. You learn how to cover up in space because it's a defense mechanism. You or you I don't know if it's intentionally, but out of this internalization of this insecurity, you can gain weight. You can turn to food, gain weight because it protects you. It becomes a layer of protection. It's repellent. Men will not notice me. Men will not see me. Women will not be threatened by me. I am invisible. You learn to become invisible in public spaces because it's safer. It's easier to accept a woman who is invisible in a public space than it is to accept a woman who is blatantly visible and proud of it. That's a very difficult thing for everybody to just sort of, and I've seen it with, like I say, it affects women and men. I've seen women who are just, you know, who just take up space, and other women feeling uncomfortable about that. And that's crazy to me. That's crazy to me.